Classrooms open. On Hyperberia, that was another place that I forgot the name. Atlantis, Lumeria, Hyperberia, Titaria. Oh my gosh. People don't even get it. But classroom open.
Principles of levitation, flight, and atomic energy built the pyramids here. His theory held that ancient humans rose from the northern regions during the Golden Age, about 12,000 years ago. The flood caused them to leave the Kola Peninsula and move south. He also believed that Sami shamans who lived in the area were the bearers of the ancient wisdom of Hyperborea.
See?
The Greeks believed Hyperborea was an island to the north inhabited by giants. Hecataeus of Miletus, an early Greek historian and geographer, believed the Hyperborean site was located on an island in the ocean beyond the country of the Celts. Diodorus wrote, "There is an island in the ocean opposite the coast of Celtic Gaul. It is not smaller than Sicily and lies to the north. It is inhabited by the Hyperboreans, so called because they lived beyond the north wind. This island is rich in soil and fruitful in everything, of a suitable temperature, and returns its produce twice a year." In the year 450 BC, Herodotus, the Greek historian, wrote about Hyperborea. He said it was a kingdom whose people were affluent and influential enough to transmit goods from the northern reaches of Europe to the island of Delos in Greece, illuminated by the shining sun for 6 months a year. Pindar, the ancient Greek lyric poet from Thebes, wrote that, "Not by ship nor on foot would you locate the spectacular road to the gathering of the Hyperboreans," a comment that further confirms the inaccessibility of this region. While undoubtedly skeptics would dismiss this suggestion, the only place due north where the sun shines continuously, at least 6 months a year, is the area above the Arctic Circle, a region obviously not easily accessible, particularly during the winter months. So, is this the legendary home of the Hyperboreans? The locals certainly believe it is. In 2018, the town of Kovdor in the Kola Peninsula is to be promoted as the capital of Hyperborea. The idea is supported by regional governor Marina Kovtun, who presented it at a conference with Russian journalist Alexei Venediktov. The project involves the construction of a tourist village where guests can learn more about Hyperborea. Furthermore, the great seer Nostradamus called the Russians the Hyperborean people. A Russian expedition team, including the Pulkovo Observatory's press secretary, Sergei Smirnov, professor of geological and geographical sciences, Dmitry Subetu, and professor of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, Valery Chudinov, made an attempt to study the pyramids in 2007. However, the pyramids are located in a remote region, and with the locals reluctant to show the way, the expedition did not exactly run smoothly. It was a more dangerous and challenging journey than the researchers had expected. Most of it was conducted via helicopter. However, some interesting information was documented. According to the Russian geologist M.A. Volkov of Murmansk State Technical University, there are at least 2 pyramids connected by a bridge and oriented to the cardinal points. They are 50 meters high, which is only 20 meters less than the enormous Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan.
What?
During the expedition, we took a special instrument, the most modern geophysical equipment. We are talking about the OCO-3 system, which is designed for soil research. In particular, the GPR can detect voids in the ground. Volkov continued, "It sees into the inner space of any object like an X-ray. The result of tests was consistent. The elevations are of an anthropogenic nature. Consequently, these are not natural hills, but pyramids made by human hands. It also looks as though the pyramids were increased in size at least 3 times. Clearly, these were essential buildings to the people who created them and the people who came afterward." Valentina Sharipova, the director of a Murmansk research organization, says that the roots of the name Kola can be traced back to the name of the Slavic sun god Kolyada. Sharapova continues, "Recently they discovered the remains of an observatory or pyramid which was directed at the polar star, and numerous rocks have inscriptions or runes carved into them. Ancient cultures followed the movements of the sun and moon, measured
tell you,
time,
back to
and
Earth.
related their world to the world above through the
Stars.
magnificent and mysterious structures they built. Hence, some researchers have theorized that the pyramids act as observatories, allowing ancient astronomers to track the stars and planets. The Gusek Circle, discovered from aerial surveys in
Astrology and
1991,
numerology.
was thought to be one of the world's oldest solar observatories. It was built nearly 7,000 years ago by one of Europe's oldest cultures, long before the civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. However, if the dating is right, and the theory about its purpose is also correct, this would beat it by 2,000 years or more. Let's go back and take a look at the Barchenko expedition of the early 1920s. This takes us into some rather extraordinary territory. Barchenko had at least 3 objectives. The first was to find traces of a disappeared civilization. His second objective was to study a strange phenomenon that manifested itself in this region, known as the experience of illusion. The third one is where it gets very odd.
What?
It was to search for the magicians who control the course of world history.
Wow, the
Some
Magi.
sources say that a number of the underground passages were impassable, not because it was blocked, but because it had an inbuilt defense system. When members of the expedition tried to penetrate the defense system, they were instantly struck by anxiety. Apparently, it had a particular generator/emitter of waves of a specific frequency which could affect consciousness.
Oh, that's
Of
what I was
course,
telling
this
somebody. You
sounds
couldn't
like
go
it is
into
straight
those
out of a
towns.
science fiction movie, but
you
events
know,
that happened afterward
to them
indeed
areas.
suggest something odd may have been
Hectowatts.
happening in this remote
That
area of
frequency
Russia.
will fuck you up. if you
50
wasn't
years
alive.
later, on September the 4th, 1972, a bomb was placed in the depths of Mount Kurpur.
For
The
what?
operation was codenamed Napier 1. The second underground blast was conducted under the same Kurpur mountain on August the 27th, 1984. It was codenamed Napier 2. Witnesses reported that the explosions were so powerful that the mountain seemed to jump up and then sank back. According to the official version, the goal of the entire operation was to carry out an experiment with the hope of developing new technology for subterranean ore mining, using enormous explosions to crush sections of ore bodies. There are some suspicious oddities with this story.
Yeah.
Under the pretext that there were no suitable roads in the region, all the ore they managed to produce was left unused in situ.
Unbelievable.
This seems like a strange excuse. Alexei V. Yablokov, professor at the Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow and a prominent Russian environmental advisor, sheds more light on this subject. He says the reason for not transporting the ore cannot be taken seriously. All these years later, this volume of ore still hasn't been used, indicating that ore
Unbelievable.
extraction was not the primary goal of the experiment.
What's the purpose then?
If the Russian military was conducting operations here, who would be the target? Stalmokov, AV, an expert on wave beams, said the following. There was some critical problem on a national scale, a menace of some sort. This threat was hiding throughout the entire underground section of the Lovozero Massif. It is more than likely, rather than being nuclear devices or simple bombs, they were electromagnetic. Forced downwards into the underground tunnels, this was presumably the primary objective of the Dnepr project. Also, it is likely the result was most successful. The first explosion damaged the anomaly. With the second explosion, the anomaly was ultimately finished off.
Oh, man.
Interestingly, 124 nuclear explosions were made in the former USSR from 1965 to 1988.
Holy
All
shit,
were
what the
underground.
fuck? They was destroying.
Is this just a coincidence?
They was fighting somebody.
This gives
into
an
the fire.
entirely new meaning to the many nuclear tests and explosions of the
Holy
20th
shit.
century. Furthermore, what if the atomic program was designed not to fight the enemies in the Cold War, but rather to fight someone or something else? Given that all nations are
Oh
obviously
my
under the
gosh,
direction
maybe
of
he
the
was
same
sending that
entities,
energy to me.
why would they need
That
nuclear
frequency.
weapons in the first place? All this warrants a more careful study.
Dragons or
Whether
giants.
this is the ancient homeland of the Hyperbereans remains to be seen. However, there is enough evidence to suggest it could be. There has certainly been an unusual amount of interest in the area in the last 100 years to indicate something out of the ordinary was located here. Maybe not just in the distant past either, but also in the relatively recent past.
Salute. One time for the one time, man. Now y'all see what I be doing. I'm a nerd. I love knowledge. I love taking my consciousness and my subconsciousness to these different realms, different times, and just travel. Because I know when I rest at night, my body's here, but my consciousness, subconsciousness, soul is gone. It's in Hyperberia, Lemuria, Atlantis. Oh man, it's beautiful. Wow, they was fighting some motherfucking, I don't know, man. It's so much shit, man. I wouldn't put it past anybody today. So I hope y'all enjoyed that, because I enjoyed it, and I'm feeling good. I just heard from my daughter and seen some pictures while I was watching this. And I love y'all. So one time for the one time in the classroom for the night.